Hi guys, for this session, we'll be talking about some laws of UX. I have with me Marvelous, who is a solutions architect at both Click as my co-host. We'll talk about these laws and also give you some practical use case. Always remember to join the Q&A sessions after the call. I and Marv will do our best to ensure you get a better understanding of the concept as we progress with the training. Let's get started with the aesthetic usability effects. This law makes us understand that attractive things work better. Users often perceive aesthetically pleasing design as a more usable design. An aesthetically good design creates a positive response in users' brains and leads them to believe that the design works better. Some of the apps that are loved and preferred by users over the competition because of their visually appealing UI are Airbnb, Uber, Canva, Human, a fitness app, among others. Understanding aesthetic usability relationship is important for allocating resources during the product planning phase. It also has consequences for evaluating interfaces. When conducting usability testing, user researchers need to be able to recognize and analyze these effects. It is beneficial when the aesthetic usability effects manifest for your users in the actual world. It indicates that your team investment in designing an attractive user interface is paying off and resonating with your target markets. The aesthetic usability effect, however, can keep you from identifying usability problems when it occurs during user research. You can identify instances of the aesthetic usability effect during user research when you pay close attention to the user pain points, that is, communication and listening to the problems they want to solve, and also how it relates to their individual workflows or business workflows. So let's pretend that we're running a live quantitative usability test while we watch the participants struggle with a few activities on a website. His sole critique is a general remark about the interface attractiveness. So, Mav, what's your opinion on this?
I think the individual may feel under pressure to offer their opinion on anything, and I believe it is frequently simpler for users to provide feedback on a website's visual design, especially for the new users. The participants can feel under pressure to compliment the website, and participants are more likely to give you meaningless compliments if they think you were involved in the site's creation. So let's assume we rule out the first two scenarios and that our users feel at ease during this session and is not under any pressure to speak up or offer meaningless praises. It is possible that the aesthetic usability effect is in play here. Obviously, there are usability issues that need to be resolved, but it's a hint that our visual design might be effective. We can strive to solve the issue once we ascertain why our users is endorsing a visual design following a terrible encounter. And I believe attractive things work better when they also solve the problem, and that means the design has to complement the functionalities too.
Great. Let's move on to the next. Hick's law. Too many complicated options reduce the likelihood of the user making a decision. As a result, the time it takes the user to make a decision increases as the number of options increases. It is obvious that the user attempts to consider all possible options and what they entail and will choose what he or she considers the best option. Which is better, a single form with 20 options to complete, or a step by step form with 4 stages and 5 options per stage?
Definitely, a step by step form with stages will do better. I sometimes get disappointed when I see forms with long requests. I have made such mistakes several times too. I think one interesting thing is understanding the type of users that are meant to use the form. Nonetheless, I remember during the marketing class in my early 20s, I was taught anchoring in marketing, and our instructors would always say it's better to provide the users with minimal options. Three options max because then the users would make better decisions and they would also understand the value of their time and money.
That's a great contribution, Marv. Over to fifth law. This law states that the time to acquire a target is a function of the distance to and the size of the target. This means, as designers, we should ensure that the target action is easily accessible to the users, both in terms of the distance the user must travel and the size of the target. According to psychologist Paul Fitts, Increasing the usability of a design by ensuring that the interactive element is large enough for users to easily select, ensuring it is separate from other interface elements. This can also reduce the amount of work from the users to achieve specific tasks or goals.
This law has a direct impact on the user experience when designing atomic components such as buttons. For example, you can have larger buttons on mobile applications. This, of course, leads to the conclusion that having smaller buttons are more difficult to interact with, especially when you have those smaller buttons on mobile applications.
Next is the law of Prägnanz. This is also known as the law of simplicity. This law states that users perceive complex forms in the simplest way possible because it requires the least amount of mental effort. In other words, to avoid mental overload, your audience will always seek simplicity in complex or ambiguous designs. This is why a call to action button are usually rectangles than hexagons or other complex shapes.
People naturally detect and understand ambiguous or complex images in the most basic form, since doing so requires the least amount of cognitive work on our part. So I think it's quite necessary for designers to really consider the pregnant law because it makes your design simpler and easier to interact with.
We also have the Pareto principle. We definitely adopt this law in basically all our workflows at both click. It states that only 20% of the work produces 80% of the results. The Pareto principle is widely used in a variety of industries, not just design. It will be extremely useful for projects with limited resources or deadlines. Focus on designing areas that will provide the most benefit to your audience while keeping the Pareto principle in mind.
The Pareto principle can be used to aid in optimization efforts. Only a few key variables influence the outcome of any given system, while the majority of other factors have little or no effect.
Next is the law of proximity. Objects that are near or proximate to each other tend to be grouped together. Users group together elements or objects that are positioned close to each other. Simply put, you need to put thought into how you arrange elements so you can create common region elements. This requires strategic use of white space to separate or group elements to show meaningful groupings. Over to Miller's law. The average person can hold only 7 plus or minus 2 items in their working memory. Miller's law explains why attention is limited. Since people can hold 7 items in their working memory at most, aim to reduce their cognitive load or the mental effort it takes to remember everything to make a decision. Some ways to do so: minimize choices as Hick's law states. Design based on learning models to reduce learning load. Circle back to Jacob's law for this. Keep your design clutter free. Next is the serial position effect. According to this law, among the elements of a series, users will always remember the first one and the last one. In the application navigation bar, the most important actions are placed on the left or the right. A practical example of this can be what you see on platforms like Instagram.
Next is the von Restorff effect. The von Restorff effect, or the isolation effect, says that people are more likely to remember an object that's even slightly different than other similar objects. The psychiatric behind this UX law made a simple observation. Package information you want to attract attention to in a visually distinct manner. This is why CTA buttons tend to have different colors than the rest of the buttons within that space or even in the entire design. Over to Jacob's law. Users prefer your sites to be designed the way other sites they use are designed. This law was defined by the director of the Nelson Norman Group, Jacob Nelson. This may be the reason why the majority of clients rely so heavily on the samples they give the designers. Designing for familiarity is a fantastic idea though. At BoldClick, we encourage our designers and product engineers to be extremely creative, but we also watch out that their creativity doesn't cause problems or worse, chaos. Note that these laws definitely goes beyond designs. However, when introducing new ideas or systems, designing for familiarity should be a primary consideration. For more details on how you can study these laws, check out lawsofux.com or you can check out uxcompanion.com. You can also download the UX Companion app. In my opinion, it's a must for folks in UX and any other design area. I have personally recommended this app to every UI or UX designer I have met and worked with for the past 3 to 4 years.
Thanks for that. Let's talk about the law of uniform connectedness. Visually connected elements are perceived as more related than elements with no connection. This is another grouping principle. According to it, users see grouped together elements as connected. Again, this means you use the visual direction to group elements that are linked to meet your audience expectation. Remember to join the Q&A sessions on Discord. If you're not on the server, join with the link below. Ensure you come along with your questions. In the next class, we will teach you how to use and work with Figma. We'll go through every part of Figma, explaining the various tools and functionalities. Thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe and most importantly, remember to invite your friends to study along with us. Thank you.